So let's look at the projects module. So you have to create the projects by clicking on this projects module, and you will be redirected to the project landing screen. So the landing screen basically has your code, it has the project name, it has the client, team, project value, status, start date, end date, and the planned estimated hours, actual hours, and the invoice amount. So for creating, so you have in the landing screen a grid view and also a card view. So where you can view your projects one below the other in the card view. So let us add a project. So we are in the projects addition screen. So the first field that you have to create is your client group and then the client name. So why we have two different fields? Because for a group you may have multiple clients who might have a different billing GST. So the client group and client name has to come from the masters. If you don't have this coming as a drop down, if you have the rights to create the client group, please go and create the client group and client name, or you can ask your admin to create it. So right now let me take one client group. And so if you see, there are two client names appearing here. So whatever for this project code, whatever is the client name which is relevant, kindly select that. Entity is Nithya Tax by default. If you want to change the entity, again you can pick up the relevant entity from the drop down. Add the project name. Select the project category. So wherever there are drop downs, you can be assured that these comes from the master. In case you don't have the relevant drop down, your category appearing in the drop down, please ask your admin to add the drop down. So now for these retainership compliance, let us select the team members. So for instance, we selecting Mr. Puneet as the team leader. Let's have a team manager selected and let's have a team member. So if you don't have to scroll through the drop down, if you just type the first two letters of a name, it would automatically get selected. And let's also have this is project overview, is the description of the project. So there is an option for you to add as many descriptions that you want. So right now let me add one more description. So this would get saved. So select the billing status. So you've got three different billing status for a project. It could be a billable, non-billable, or a non-core function. So for a non-billable and a non-core function, you generally wouldn't have the engagement letter details. So you can directly go add the project value as 0, pick up a start and end date and save it. Let me first show you a billable engagement. So now in a billable engagement, first it is very important that you add a start and a end date. So I'm going to be selecting, for instance, 10th of August till 31st of March. So the end date is also very important because depending upon even for a contract which is renewable perpetually, it is definitely you need to give an end date so that you can set the reminders. So now in the engagement letter, you've got two types of engagement letter. It could be an open-ended or a close-ended. Now whenever I select the open-ended, so here again you can set whether it will automatically select as a renewable. So why I am adding an end date here is I will get a pop-up as on 31/3/2021 to remind you that this project is an open-ended project which is renewable on a perpetual basis. But still, if you want to negotiate any fee with your client, you can always go and renegotiate the fee, or you can always go and relook at the terms. So that is why we are having the end date also as a mandatory field here. And very importantly, upload your engagement letter. So you can upload any document up to 5 MB. If you are going to be uploading your mail content, so you can even upload your mail content or a PDF document or a Word document. So here I have uploaded the engagement letter. So before I save this project, let me also reiterate on what are all the very important fields that you need to definitely add on. So the client group is very important, client name is very important, entity is important. The only field which is optional here is a project overview. But however, I'm sure that also would be very ideal for you to mention the description of the project for you to go and recollect it. Now I can make, if I select a close-ended project, then again it will give you an option for whether you want the renewal type as renewable or non-renewable. If it is a non-renewable, give the expiry date of the engagement letter so that the project gets ended here. Or if it is renewable, then again please give what is the expiry date of the engagement letter so that you get an automated reminder to go back to your client and get your terms renewed. So here I am selecting the end date of the project itself as the expiry date of the engagement letter. So this is kept open-ended because in case if you have some other date or an extended date, you can always set an extended date. So there are two options here. You have of course, if you cancel it, nothing gets saved, or you can just save your project, or you can submit it. So save is ideally done when you have some particulars which is not available at this particular point of time, and you want to come back and update it. So let's say if I'm going to be saving the project, okay, so there are project value, sorry, I didn't add the project value, so that's again a mandatory field. So whichever mandatory field, if you haven't added, it will definitely alert you, otherwise it would get saved. So the project has got saved. So it is also appearing here. This is the AG Premium Steering Retainership Project. But if you see here, there will not be any project code because only on submission you will get the project code. So if you look at this, there is an edit and then there is a view project, and this is for the project commercial details. So now if I have to submit it, I will have to get into the edit. In case if I have missed out to add anything, for instance, let's say I have to change the project value, for instance, I'm editing it, or let's say I don't have the engagement letter when I saved it and now I'm re-uploading it. You can also re-upload any number of documents here. So let's say I have one more document uploaded here and just submit it. So now if you see, your new project code has got selected here. So I have a project number 78 that has got selected automatically. So now after having added a project, you may be redirected to the project commercial screen directly. I came here to show you the project code that gets added. So this is your commercial screen where you will schedule your invoices. So you have different options for scheduling invoices. Either it could be a one-time, yearly, monthly, quarterly, milestone based, or if none of these are possible, then you can also have a custom date. So let me take you through each of these options, and the most relevant for you could be the quarterly or it could be the one time. So first select your invoice method. I think for your projects, mostly it will be fixed fee and very rarely it would be hourly fee. So if you see the project value, the project start date and the project end date would come directly from your projects module. So if you have a one time, then you just have to put in a fee start date, fee end date and the amount. Now I'm going to be taking a combination, see, because this project is starting almost in the mid of a quarter. So that is why let me put a one time as on 10th of August. And let me take up to September quarter as a one time. And let's say I'm going to be adding a 1 lakh here. So this is how your one-time fixed fee has got added. Now let's say after 30th September, you want to be billing in perfect quarters, then you can just select a quarterly. You can select either the first day of the month or the last day of the month. So here I'm going to be selecting 1st October. And again, let's say I'm going to be having amount to be invoiced as, so I will ideally be having 2 more quarters here. So your quarterly invoices would get scheduled automatically. So just have a check as of now manually. Of course, we are also trying to have an automated check of the project amount and the invoice amount. But right now, just ensure that this adds up to your overall project value. And if you want to edit any of this, you can always edit. So this is how you schedule a project commercial. So now where does this commercial? So if you actually look at it, my first fee start date is as of 10th of August 2020. Okay, and my project code here is 78. So this would actually, when you go to the invoicing module, you select a project invoice And let's say if I'm going to be searching for this project code, so this gets sorted by the date. So I'm going to be selecting project code 78. So if you see those 3 invoices which we scheduled there have got automatically scheduled. But since the invoice date is later than today's date, the current date, you will not have the option for requesting or raising the invoice at this point of time. So this is how you actually create a project and you create a project commercial. Now, of course, the commercials could vary. I will also show you certain other types of commercials. For instance, I'm selecting one another project, and let's say if I want to select a milestone based. So of course there is a pop-up where you need to definitely select your invoice method. So I'm going to have a milestone. So here you can always have your milestone. So let's say advance at 15% is your first milestone, and you're going to be starting your first milestone as on 1st July, for instance, to 31st July. So the moment you put the percentage, your amount would get automatically populated. Let's say my second milestone is, I'm just putting it as second milestone payment. And let me select a date here. So I have the balance. Let's say I'm going to be adding another 60%. And let's say if I try submitting it, it will not allow you to submit because there is a check that your percentage has to add up to 100%. So so either you can change it here itself, or you can, let me change it here and resubmit it. Okay, so because I added one more field, let me delete this and now resubmit it. So your milestone based projects also have got added. Now the project code here is 47. So when I go to the invoicing, on my scheduled invoices, when I search for project 47, I would get my milestone based fee also scheduled here. So I can either have a request invoice or a raise invoice coming out here as an option, because the date of 17 is basically before your current date. Now if you feel that like neither of these options are suitable for you, that you can't have a milestone basis, then you always have the option of selecting your custom date. So in this you can add as many custom dates as you want and the description, and you can save your schedule of the invoice here. So we have looked at how to create a project. So when I go to view a project, so this will basically give you the complete information of what all we have saved in that project. So here of course you will have certain more fields of escalations and other engagement letter details, that is at the time of renewal. So when you are renewing your project, so we will see that in the renewer module. So this is your view project. Let's go back to this. So we've created the commercial, we have created a project. Now the most important step, the next step is to create your project templates. So unless and until you create your project template, you will not be able to log in your project. So these templates also come from the master and they are already predefined for you. So you can select, since it was a retainership project, I'm going to be selecting retainership as a template. And the moment I submit it, so these are all the tasks which are already there in your masters. So that is getting listed out here. And in this, this project currently, or this template currently has only a task. In certain places, you will have a milestone, a task and a subtask. So we will look at that example. But right now I am just adding a task here. So the first and most important thing is put in your date. So if you see, the start date would already be restricted to the start date of the project, because we had started the project date on 10th of August when you are creating a project, so it starts automatically. Then let's say I end the project date. So the end date of the project, select the end date of this for this particular task. and assign it to whoever is supposed to be assigned to this particular task. And you submit this. So this is how you actually create the task. So it is very important. Of course, you can ignore the SLA as of now. That is only for a demonstration purpose on the criticality. Whereas the most important fields here would be you need to have a start and end date. And there is also something called as a status. So the moment if the task is closed, please come and select the close here so that this will not appear in the drop down of your task list at the time of logging. So this is how you create a project plan. So if I now go back to the same project, so until I plan the project, it will appear as plan project. But once I have planned it, it would turn into this green symbol. And if you go into it, you can always see what are all the tasks that you have added against the projects. So we saw the project creation module tutorial. So now let us see how to log. So for creating your logs, go to the logs as a menu. So you've got two different types of logs. So by default, you will get the weekly view. You can also add a daily log. But I think the most convenient and the popular screen is to add a weekly log. So we are on the weekly log screen. So the first thing, of course, your name would automatically appear. If you are a team leader, then you may also have your team members log as a view appearing here. Or if you are an admin, you will have all the names here. So right now I'm having as a team member, only the team members log coming out here. So let's say for instance, I'm going to be, so you can select the week for which you're going to be posting it. Of course, future weeks you will not be able to select. So since the current week is already started, you can definitely save for the current week. Now let's say for an example, I'm going to be doing for a last week. Now in this last week, if you actually look at submit and save, it has already been submitted. So this log is already submitted for the last week. So I will not be able to enter anything here. So once submitted, you will not be able to edit any log. Now I'm taking the current week. So now if you look at here, there are already some transactions which have come, which the person has saved. So whatever you have saved would still appear here. So now let's say I'm going to be adding a new log here. And let me select the project. Okay, so the project that we created in the projects tutorial, for convenience, I'm selecting the same project. So code is 78. Now, since we have already planned the project, I am able to select the task. If you have not planned the project, the task or the subtask, the last level up to what you have planned will not come in here and you will not be able to log it. Of course, you can have any description that you want to put in here for you to refer at a later point of time. And ensure that you are recording at least 9 hours a day. That is very, very important. So let's say I'm going to be, otherwise the system will not allow you to submit it. So the 9 hours per day is very, very important. So we have saved the log. So once the log is saved, and if you feel that you have entered all the particulars, then go ahead and submit it. Now here again there is a check. If your total week minimum hours is not logged in up to Friday, then again it will not allow. So let's say I'm going to be having 0 here. So let me first save it. So if you see the total weeks hours is 41. So if I try submitting it, it will throw an error message saying minimum hours for the week has to be filled. So minimum the 42.5 hours needs to be filled. So let's say I'm going to be adding another 5 hours to this project. So the convenience is you can select as many projects and you can select as many clients that you want to do here. Save this. So once you save it, then only the submit button gets enabled and then submit it. So log has got updated successfully. So now if you actually look at this module, you will not be able to submit or save anything because it is already come in. So this is your daily logs view. Of course, let me go back to the. So one more restriction that the system has is You will not be able to log an expenditure unless and until you have logged your hours for a particular date. Now for Aisha, I have already logged 20th, 21st, 22nd and 23rd and 24th. So hence it is easier for me to go and add an expenditure. So let's say I'm going to so you can either go add a new expenditure through this module directly, or you can raise an expenditure from this menu. So both the options are possible. Okay, so we are going to be now taking an overview of the invoicing module. So this is the menu. So of course you will be doing a project based invoicing, like how we showed you in the project module. So whatever invoices you have scheduled would appear here, from where you will have to request the invoice. So the team member and the team manager are the people who are authorized to request an invoice. So I'm going to be adding an invoice right now. So I'm going to be selecting a request invoice screen. So if you see, most of this would come directly from your project's master. So there is nothing that you will have to enter here. So check if the entity is right, if the group name is correct and the client name is correct. Only for the first time, in case if you have more than 2 names that is appearing in the drop down, please go to the projects master and select to the projects page, projects creation page, and select the right client name so that it gets reflected into your client name here. Otherwise, it will by default, whichever client name has you have selected in the project screen at the time of creation of a project would appear in here. So this is only for you to check if all the details are correctly in there. Now here the entity is NGKA. So since NGKA is a taxable entity, or which is liable for a GST, you will have the GST calculation here. Now the client is registered in the state of Pondicherry and NGKA is registered in Delhi. So that is why it gets an IGST of 18%. So now if you see, the project or service is directly taken, the HSN code also is directly taken from the masters. The narration also comes from the masters. So your admin would add the narration in the masters, which would get reflected here. But if you now just look at this sentence, it is half. Professional charges towards indirect tax compliance services provided on a retainership basis for the period. So now the period is blank because the description is standard. In the comment section, you can always go and add whatever you want to suffix to your narration portion. Now for this project, since no expenditure has been logged, your out-of-pocket expenditure is 0. But you can always edit an expenditure. So you don't have any expenses. So any expenditure line item which is not yet been built would basically appear here. But since for this project there is no expenditure which is being captured, it is not here, it is not coming in here. But you have the option of either creating an ad hoc amount. Now let's say for this particular invoice, I am creating an ad hoc amount. So it could be either an ad hoc amount or it could be a percentage. So now let's say if I don't take an ad hoc amount and if I take a percentage, I will get the 5% on the invoice value, which would come as my OP. Or I can also have a combination of both. So now here I'm going to be selecting an ad hoc amount and adding it to the invoice. So now if you see, the GST calculation has changed. It has taken the base amount plus your out-of-pocket expenditure amount and the GST has got calculated. If you want to view the engagement letter, you can always view the engagement letter by clicking the icon here, which will get opened. So I have added an image, so that is why it is coming an image. If it is a Word document, you will also have the Word document scroll. And once you have ensured that all the details are filled in, you can go and request it. So the main points while at the time of requesting an invoice is ensure that all the fields are available. If any of these fields are not available, then you will have to go to the respective masters. Entity by default would come in. In case if your group name or a client name is incorrect, you have to go to the project screen and change it. If your billing address or your country and state is incorrect, kindly go to the client's master and update it. And it is a one-time updation and it will automatically repeat for all your clients. So we are going to be now requesting this invoice. So the request is now got added. successfully. So it will no more appear in your scheduled invoices list. It would go into the requested invoices list. So this was the project code 73 for which we had created the invoice, which was requested by the team member Aisha, and it gets requested here. So now the raise invoice, basically the rights would be only with Hingpa, but since Aisha also has the same user rights here, I am going to be continuing the raise invoice. But otherwise for a team member, you will actually not have this field visible for you. Now this raise invoice is basically for Hingpa. So let me go into Hingpa's login. So now if you look at Hingpa's login to the project, so it would have automatically come into the requested invoice. Now there was another invoice which was created by the admin. So there are two invoices which are appearing here for Hingpa to raise. So now basically in this module, the same screen which is requested comes in here. So the comments are also added up here. The engagement letter is here. So Hingpa checks this, and normally there will be nothing that he would be editing it. So that is why the main check here is to ensure that the engagement letter is uploaded. If the engagement letter is not uploaded, then you cannot even submit this invoice. So you have to go to the project, add the correct engagement letter, and then come back and submit it here. So now if you see, this will automatically pop up. Now for this particular project, admin is the authorization level. So normally it is the team leader who would be the authorizer. So here it is an admin. So that gets selected and then you are submitting it. So now if you see project code 73, the invoice that we have raised on 1/7 doesn't appear anymore in this requested invoice. I'm sorry, that was the schedule. So it doesn't appear in the requested invoice and it would have gone to the raised invoice screen. So if you look at this raised invoice screen, the invoice number is not yet generated because this invoice is still pending for approval. So now let us go to the admin module, because for this screen the approval was sent to the admin. So I'm going to be logging in as the admin and showing you how the approval happens. So the landing screen for the invoice is always the first schedule invoices screen. So from whichever page you are navigating, you will always be redirected to this particular page. So you will have to go to the particular tab. Now, if I am an approver, that is specifically if it is a team leader, then all the invoices which are pending for approval would appear in here. So now if you actually look at, so this invoice was what we added 73 as on 1/7/2020. Of course, there is also another previous invoice which is still pending for approval. So this is the TL approval screen. So whatever was requested would automatically come in here. So the same details. So of course the TL also has nothing to edit here. So the only editable field here would be, of course, the comments. If you want to add anything more to the comments, you can always add it. And of course, if you want to edit the expenditure, you can edit it. So these are the two fields which are actually editable, whereas the rest of it is automatically popped up. So there are options for you to save it, approve or reject. Now let's look at first view PDF. So this basically gives you an idea about what would be there in your invoice. So you can check if, so here the invoice number would not have got generated because the invoice is yet to be approved. So you can check if the address, if the descriptions, if the out of pocket expenses and rest of the terms are correct, and go back. Now let's say you feel that the comments have to be changed, then you can always change it. Let's say I'm saying for the period 2019 to 2020, or let's say in edit expenditure, you are editing instead of 2500, you are only taking 2000 and you're adding it. So once you have added this, now this is where you will save the changes. So wherever you're making any edit to this invoice, first save it and then approve it. Otherwise, you will not be able to get the correct approval. So now once you have saved it, if you go back to the PDF, now here you can see that whatever amendment you have made, the amendment to the period is now got changed, and the OPE amount is also got changed, which we edited. So now if you're okay with all these changes, you can go ahead and approve. Now there will again be a pop-up which will ask you, have you made all the necessary changes and would you like to finally approve the invoice? So you say okay, and if you go into your two approved invoices, it will not appear anymore. And if you see the project code 73, I have a new invoice which is created 4/2021, which is already approved.